NAMICon 2022, and we have 5 dynamic tracks for you, and they are advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion on mental health, engaging with youth and young adults, exploring innovations in mental health research and treatment, implementing best practices for NAMI state organizations and affiliates, transforming mental health crisis response systems. In addition to these incredible tracks, we have some outstanding speakers, starting with our opening plenary speaker, actor, author, and mental health advocate, Mayim Bialik. Mayim Bialik is best known for her lead role as Blossom Russo in the early 1990s television sitcom Blossom, and her award-winning portrayal of Amy Farrah Fowler on CBS The Big Bang Theory, and as the current co-host of Jeopardy! Earlier this year, she made her debut as a feature writer and director with As They Made Us. Mayim is also a champion for mental health awareness and advocacy, while being very popular and at a great point in her career. Mayim elected to step away from acting. After wrapping up production on Blossom, Mayim took a break from acting to earn a BS and PhD in neuroscience from UCLA. In addition to her acting and academic accomplishments, Mayim, some of us may not know this, has also authored a myriad of books, 2 of which reached #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And here are the 2 of the titles that I want you to remember. Girling Up, How to Be Strong, Smart, and Spectacular. Boying Up, How to Be Brave, Bold, and Brilliant. Incredible titles. Mayim, we're really fortunate to have you with us here today and to be kicking off our NAMI convention. And we just can't thank you enough for doing it. And I just want to say, for you selecting us as the beneficiary of the Jeopardy donations and you being the guest host during that time and raising over $194,000 for us. Thank you. Thank you so very much. And we're just so fortunate to have you with us. And I have the preset questions, and I will definitely go with those, but really welcome. And want to see if you want to have anything as an opening comment before we go into the questions.
Sure. Thank you for that introduction. I really hate hearing about myself, but I'm very flattered, very honored to be here. And, as I hope we'll get into, so many aspects of my life, in one way or another, have and do revolve around mental health and mental wellness. And, even the movie that you mentioned, As They Made Us, highlights mental illness and addiction in a home. Yeah, I'm sure like I said, I'm sure we'll get to it. I want to get to your questions, but I'm very grateful to be here. I do have a personal longstanding connection with NAMI, even outside of the public eye, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So really to even be, to be able to be part of the community in a way that's so meaningful to me personally, I'm very grateful for and happy to continue to do advocacy on behalf of NAMI.
Thank you for that. And why don't we start right there in terms of, you mentioned long-standing relationship with NAMI. What brought you to NAMI, and how long have you been with NAMI, and what value do you see in what we do?
My father of blessed memory was hospitalized when I was in my 20s. And, I grew up in a home with a lot of love, a lot of creativity. My parents were artists and hysterical people. Like really, really awesome, loving, connected. And also my home was full of a lot of chaos and unpredictability, and we didn't have names for it. It was the thing that we didn't talk about. And even when things happened, and when furniture broke, and when dishes flew, and when it felt very scary, we also didn't talk about it. You got over it as quickly as possible. And if you didn't, there was something wrong with you. And this is not, I don't share that to make people feel bad for me. I share that because that's the story of many, 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 many people all over this world, no matter what kind of home you come from, no matter how rich you are, how poor you are, no matter if you're black, white, this is not something that discriminates. I grew up in a home that was very, very touched through and through by mental illness. And when my father was hospitalized, we were told that there's an organization that helps. And the first thing I thought was like, nope, I'm fine, because that's what you're taught to do. And for whatever reason, my heart and my brain were open enough. I'm emotional thinking about it because it was the worst 8 days of, my father's life, I'm sure, when he was hospitalized. And he was very angry. And I went to a NAMI meeting, and they started talking about ways that I can start to help myself so that my father can have the dignity of his own recovery and his own path. This was a very foreign concept to me. I came from a house where it was my job to fix everything. Like, what do you mean? And I had an unbelievable NAMI leader. Her name was Mary Lee. She has since passed away. And I would go to meetings. I would drive to Marina Del Rey, and I would sit in this woman's living room with a bunch of people I didn't know. And we would ask questions, and she would talk about the principles of NAMI, the principles of dignity, the principles of stepping out of the way, and letting people have their experience and their life and getting help where they really need it, and not necessarily from their children or even their spouses who might mean well. There were so many things I was doing that I thought was helping that NAMI showed me was actually not helping. Enabling is different than supporting. Having a place where I could air my feelings was something no one ever had provided for me. It was a turning point in my understanding of mental illness, and eventually led me to other rooms of 12-step recovery for people who grew up in difficult homes. And it was the principles of NAMI and Mary Lee that literally got us through not only those 8 days, but allowed me to eventually be able to really talk with my father about that experience, and to give him the best opportunity to live a life of dignity. He was rarely medication compliant, which is something that often happens with people who are bipolar. And my father suffered greatly, and our family suffered greatly because of the lack of support that our culture has, especially for men. And my dad came a long way, as did my mom and I. But there's a tremendous amount of pain when you grow up, with a family member who is suffering and you can't do anything to fix it. But again, the lessons of NAMI, the meetings, the support groups, all those things, those stayed with me. And I went for years, and then decided to speak up more publicly about my life when my friend Will Wheaton started working with NAMI and talking about his mental illness. It never occurred to me to tell people what I had, what I inherited, and what I lived with.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And you just spoke about the principles of NAMI and also the essence of NAMI. And as we talk about the essence of NAMI, it's voices like yours that mean so much to this situation in our society, and how we get discounted and minimized. And I just want to ask you about something else that you're doing with your voice, if you be so kind. You've created a podcast called Mayim Bialik's Breakdown.
Yeah,
Could you tell us? I mean, I found it very interesting, the title,
that's right.
and I would love to find out why you chose that title, Mayim, and then a little bit about what your mission is with the podcast.
Yeah, so I have a podcast that's completely devoted to mental health, mental wellness. We liked the double play on breaking information down, like break it down, and also the notion of the breakdowns that we often have. People talk about nervous breakdown or a mental breakdown, and I'm one of those annoying people who doesn't like when people use the word crazy to mean behavior I don't like. So I definitely knew I didn't want any title that inferred anything about my lack of sensitivity, because I'm very, very sensitive. About the way we speak about people, especially people who are living with mental health challenges. And labels are very important to me. One of the things that I do break down on our episodes is the differences between, for example, bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. What is schizophrenia? Do you even know the difference between an anxiety attack and a panic attack? A lot of people don't know basic things that we do have a culture where people say, I'm so OCD. And as someone who has obsessive compulsive disorder, I get very persnickety when people say, I like my shoes lined up. I have OCD. And I say, well, do you really? Would you like to know the criteria? And I'm not fun at parties. Like, let's not joke around. But the fact is, this podcast is supposed to destigmatize and help people have even a basic education about mental wellness. We talk to people who sometimes have figured it out and sometimes are still figuring it out. We talk to people who favor medication, people who favor other things. We talk about why people tell you to meditate, what sleep has to do with mental health, what food has to do with mental health. And also one of the things that NAMI has taught me in particular is about the holes in our mental health care system in particular, especially for people of color, for people of a socioeconomic status where they may not have access to things that many of us take for granted. The notion of therapy and psychiatry in particular being exorbitantly expensive it's a disgrace that we live in a country where we cannot guarantee basic mental health care for the people who live in this country. And it is communities of color that are suffering tremendously. And this is something I think people should be rioting in the streets about. And that is something that NAMI does seek to address, especially with meetings all over the city that I live in. There are meetings in every part of this city that you can go to. There's an Ask the Psychiatrist night where a psychiatrist comes and answers questions just from regular people who would never have access to a psychiatrist. And that's what we're trying to do a miniature version of on our podcast, just to give people information for free.
You know what? It's wonderful, and I've listened to several of them, and they're just outstanding. And thank you for bringing your voice to this. It's so incredible. Now you got your doctorate and your BS from UCLA in OCD, and but more important than that, you went against the norms. You were at the top of your acting, and you decided to go away from status quo and peer pressure and go back to school. And go away from industry, the acting industry. Talk to us in our audience about peer pressure and being comfortable in your own skin and your decision and what it means to your body of work now and your voice about mental health and mental illness.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a huge component of that is really learning to differentiate, from your home of origin in a lot of ways, and while I grew up in a home where the status quo was very important, color inside the lines, like make it look like everything's fine because everything's fine, right? So for me, that was a huge departure to say that the momentum of my career was actually not where I felt my person needed to be. I don't want to say my soul. That sounds like such an LA thing to say. But, we like, what do you want to do in life? What do you want to be valued for? I wanted to be valued for what was in my brain, things, ideas. I wanted to have more of a normal experience rather than sort of being this actor person whose life had been determined by, what I'm very grateful for, but, felt like a big stroke of luck, to have this career that I had so young. I always had wanted to work with individuals with challenges, with special needs. And I worked in a special population in the Department of Psychiatry. That's where I did my thesis. And obviously, as a person who has obsessive compulsive disorder and, was dealing with a lot of very intense mental health challenges as I left my parents' home, because that often happens. When you're in the system, everything's fine. And when you remove yourself from the system, your purpose seems like it's missing. So those were very difficult years, but I ended up meeting the person I ended up marrying, and we had 2 kids together. I had my first son in grad school and my second right after. We have been divorced for 10 years now, but we raise our children dutifully, and we've introduced them to therapy because Lord knows with me as their mom, they're going to need it. But no, teaching children also an emotional vocabulary, and not in an obnoxious way. I was not a constantly narrating a child's emotions kind of parent. But, it's been a huge part of my life is not repeating a lot of things that were difficult for me. I don't do it perfectly, but that's also what the support of NAMI helps you do. It helps you get your life on track so that you're not kind of swallowed up by the needs of others. And the movie that I made is actually specifically about that. How do you balance your needs with that of your parents and also that of your children? So that's something I guess I've been dealing with since I decided to leave acting.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about the movie, if you would.
Yeah.
That I would love to. We'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, I didn't set out to make an autobiography or a memoir, but after my father passed away, and when a complicated parent passes away, or loved one, there's something called complicated grief, and indeed it is complicated. And I started to write. I started to write an arc of a story about the way some family members deal with a difficult family member is to leave. And I know many, many families with, that sibling who doesn't speak to anyone, or that aunt who no one wants to invite. There's a lot of these dynamics in families with mental illness in particular, because many events can be marred by the impact of a mental health challenge on the whole family. And so I wrote a script about the sibling who stayed, and what happens when you're the only one and there's a sibling who's not participating in caretaking, for parents. And Dustin Hoffman and Candice Bergen play these parents. Diana Agron and Simon Helberg, who I was on Big Bang Theory with, play the kids. Also, Julian Gant, who I work with on Call Me Kat, he plays Dustin Hoffman's caregiver. So I also got to include a cast member from my present life. And then Simon Helberg was a cast member from my past. And I wrote it, I directed it, and we filmed in New Jersey last summer. And it's incredibly vulnerable, to bring up abuse in a film, to bring up how a home can have love and abuse, and to show the ups and downs in particular of a character that's very, very unpredictable. And my father, of blessed memory, he softened a lot in his later years. And, my kids only knew a very gentle, playful, fun-loving Zadie. That was their grandpa.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's also something that's complicated to reckon with. My children are now 13 and 16, and I've been honest about the mental health challenges in my entire family. It's not just our branch. It literally runs throughout our family. We know there are genetic markers, genetic propensities to certain things. And we are a post-Holocaust family where the, World War II, the Depression, those things hang heavily on families, and intergenerational trauma is a real thing. And now science is backing up all of those of us who have known this for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? And Mayim, you're just so authentic, so real. I mean, just speaking to us on today is it's just so wonderful and so valued for us, for you to be with us. You just mentioned communities of color, and thank you for bringing your voice to that conversation. And as we look at connecting during turbulent times and with the ongoing pandemic, conflict abroad, continued the divides and disparities within our own country. From your view, how are these things influencing and exacerbating the mental health crisis in these United States?
Well, many of us believe it's been a crisis for a very, very long time. And, to put it frankly, and I wouldn't be alive if not for this country. I am a lover of this country. But the policies surrounding access to mental health, the policies surrounding the distribution of wealth, especially regarding how we can reach more communities, has already been devastating for decades. And what we've seen now, people kind of forget, because it all gets swallowed up by COVID. This country was brought to its knees by a movement, a Black Lives Matter movement, that alerted us to some of what was going on, that another thing no one wanted to talk about. And it really did shine a light also. I mean, I'm trying not to get political, but that movement and the conversation around it also sparked a conversation about how do we take care of people in a crisis? And the solution is not necessarily one of force and murder. That is not the only way to address what in many cases is someone who needs help. And it's a very fine line, and it's something I've spoken to my NAMI connections about for years. We don't want to say that every single person is mentally ill and that mentally ill people don't obey the law or participate in criminal activity. However, we are now all seeing evidence that in many cases what people need is help. And if it is not addressed earlier, it will continue to come out. And this, again, is not a statement on Black Lives Matter. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that consciousness is what started when then we were all put into our houses and we couldn't go out for a very long time. Everybody's defective character came out. If you were anxious a little bit, it skyrocketed. Like, you had a little bit of OCD, it likely became hoarding. Like, it's really, everything got magnified. Your relationships, you thought you were being married to that person because you never had to see them, right? Now you got to see them all the time. Do you still like them? And so that's literally why Jonathan Cohen, my partner, and I started the podcast. Because, like, I was losing my mind, and I have access to a psychiatrist. I have medication. I have yoga. I have a therapist. What about people who don't? So that's what these last 2 years have kind of done. And the anxiety of not knowing who to trust and how to trust the government, even regarding basic information about CDC, should I wear a mask? Should I not wear a mask? That would make anybody anxious. So we're seeing all these increases in how many people have you spoken to, you don't need to answer, who started drinking a lot more, smoking a ton of pot, like doing things during because we're self-medicating. We're all freaking out. Like that's, and also as the mother of teens, it hits them hard. Even when they say they're okay, they're lonely. It's confusing. They're scared too.
You know, to that point, what we are doing in terms of youth and young adults is we started a young adult advisory, what we call Next Gen advisory group. And in that advisory group, we sent out a call in an application process through social media for 10 seats of young adults to come and work with us and to sit with us as we did our work going forward in addressing mental health for young adults. And we had 740 applicants for 10 seats. Young people want to be a part of the solution. They want to be a part of the conversation. Yeah. So it's wonderful that we were able to do that.
It's vernacular, and it should be, you know. And for those of us who grew up in a generation where we weren't given those words, we weren't given the right to say, I'm not cold, Mom, I don't need a sweater, right? It's that sense of like owning your experience. And our kids are primed for that. For better or for worse, they are primed for a lot of words and a lot of images, and the images come fast. Like, my kids learn a lot about mental health through posts that I have no access to, meaning I don't know who they're looking at talking about suicide. I don't know what they're seeing. I'm afraid that they'll see the news, you know, and there's so many things that they're going to impact kids differently. Some are very impacted by certain things and give them nightmares and make them want to eat way too much, right? You don't know how your kid's going to be affected. So I'm very grateful, you know, that NAMI also is paying attention to that. Kids, they're not just smaller adults. They have a different brain, you know?
They have a different brain. And to that point, I do have a follow-up as we wrap this up. But I did want to mention something to you that, you know, as you mentioned some of the things that have been happening for generations, technology has come along to bring light to it in terms of the disparity and the things going on. Also, when COVID started, if you'll remember, our essential workers were service workers, and the label was changed to essential, and that was subliminal, but there was method behind it from the standpoint of, and many of those folks were living in homes with several generations and putting their loved ones at risk. Coming full circle, it's access to care. Now, what I wanted to mention is that if you have a Siri, and if you said, I am feeling depressed, it would be something that I would think you would love to see, or you may already know that NAMI comes up as a resource. And it says, sorry to hear that, and we will connect you with a family or friend if you like. If not, we'd like to connect you with NAMI.org. So that happens when you say, I am feeling depressed into Siri. So I wanted to mention that as a way forward. Yeah. So as we look at our young people, we yes, thank you. That we see that as an opportunity to help us. Now, as we still see that there's some advancements and to celebrate the light on some of the ongoing challenges and stigma, what excites you about the future of mental health support and access?
What excites me is how much our young people are increasingly encouraged to name feelings and have them. I'm encouraged by school programs that are starting to include even concepts of mindfulness, concepts of pausing. I'm encouraged that the kind of old model of, study all day and night until you're blue in the face, get into the most expensive private college, and that's the definition of success. I'm encouraged that that is no longer the only message that we are putting out there. The notion that we should live a life and choose a life that is good for our mental health is at least becoming part of more of a conversation. And that is because of the work that NAMI has done. It's because of how much we are trying to remove the stigma. I had Simon Helberg, who's in my movie, and from Big Bang Theory on my podcast. We interviewed him today, and he was incredibly open about his mental health challenges, incredibly explicit. And even I was shocked. And what he said was, there can be no stigma if we want to move forward. And just the idea that it's just one small example. I'm not saying that he's the pinnacle of how we decide mental health is going, but the fact that this friend of mine, who's about my age, wasn't raised with this consciousness, is happy to talk about it and wants to help people, that has to keep happening. It has to happen more and more. It's not fun to detail all the diagnoses I have. It's not fun to take medication. It's really not. And I've lived a lot of different ways in my life, but we can't be afraid anymore. I'm not a weak person for being on medication. I promise.
Is there anything that you'd like to close with for our audience?
No, I mean, I could talk forever about this stuff. And I really would like to say that while I'm grateful to have this platform, I am no better and no worse because I'm a public person who lives with mental health challenges. There are people struggling and there are people thriving all over this world of all different shapes, sizes, colors, backgrounds, gender identities. We are a community of humanity that is living in an exceptional time. And there are exceptional challenges for every generation, but we are living our challenges, and it is stressful and it's difficult. And the more we start making room for that, I think the better we'll all be. And I really would like to see our government step up in meaningful ways. And I know that that's a huge part of NAMI's mission also, is to make our mission known so that we can actually start changing what mental health care looks like for all people.
Mayim, this has been wonderful. Thank you for lending your
I should
voice
work for
to our
NAMI.
convention. Yes, you could, and yes, you can. What an incredible message. So this is just fantastic. So thank you so very much. And we definitely went over, but I have to tell you that the story and your life experience and you lending your voice to the community at large is so fantastic. Thank you so very much. I just can't. And I don't know if I can knock on your door or not, but we do have a national board, Mayim, and we need I'm serious. We need a strong voice to help us navigate this space. If we do what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always gotten, and we got to change, and we need to be able to do that now. We can't wait. And I think we're at an inflection point looking at the fiscal year 23 budget and what's being put in for mental health. But if we don't execute, to me, it's leadership, tone, and execution. So I offer that from the standpoint of this very seriously, this national board. And I would love to appreciate that.
We don't need to air our love for each other any more than we already have. But yes, I would love to be more involved. I'd love to talk more. And also, thank you for what you do. The NAMI staff those are the warriors behind the scenes who carry so much of this weight. And so thank you for everything you do, and to everyone who got me here today and got us together.
thanks for doing this. And I'll just close by also saying that we have, what's coming on July 16th is 988, which will be the new National Suicide Prevention number, as well as the mental health crisis number. As a Black man, as a Black father, as a Black uncle, I don't have a number that I can comfortably call right now. So I am excited individually and also collectively and in the community for this
That's
number.
really
However,
wonderful.
I just want to say that we know that this is still a work in progress, and it won't be pervasive, but it
Right.
needs to happen sooner than later. And I just appreciate all that you've said in regards to community and the whole community. Take care of that 13 and 16-year-old. And also, please tell Simon, thank you for his vulnerability, because there's strength in vulnerability and there's absolutely strength in voices. So appreciate you,
Thank you so
and
much.
hope that you felt comfortable with this conversation.
This was fantastic. Thank you.